the Muslim world and the Western world. They have been sitting and watching and pontificating at best. That's all they've been doing. Other than that, they have done nothing. And I'm excluding, obviously, the humanitarian aid that has gone there and there. We continue to die in many cities, including Benghazi, that was up until last night, was a safe haven for us.
Well, the fight goes on. Ibrahim, thank you very much indeed for that. Ibrahim Jibril there. Okay, to Somalia now, where government forces have retaken a border town from al-Shabaab fighters. A spokesman for the government says his forces are now in control of Bayad Hawa on the Kenyan border after hours of heavy gunfire. Meanwhile, fighting in the capital Mogadishu has reportedly injured dozens of people. More than 50 African Union peacekeepers have been killed in the unrest in the last 2 weeks alone. Now, in India's financial capital, Mumbai, thousands of people have lost their homes after a fire engulfed the Garib Nagar slum near Bandra railway station. The area is home to around 10,000 people, but no one is thought to have died in the blaze. In China, Premier Wen Jiabao has pledged to reduce inflation and corruption, raise income levels. He told the annual National People's Congress in Beijing. The measures are necessary to maintain social stability. Melissa Chan reports from Beijing.
It's a formal and serious affair, with officials from across the country, near and far, convening over the next 10 days. There's often a celebratory mood on the first day of Congress, with leaders looking back at the past year's economic accomplishments. But in the Great Hall of the People, China's premier used his opening speech as an opportunity for an honest assessment of what's going on in the country.
We are keenly aware that we still have a serious problem, and that our development is not yet balanced, coordinated, or sustainable.
The premier went on to discuss the threat of corruption, telling the people sitting before him that they, the officials, will be required to disclose their income, real estate, and investment details. He promised better social services to citizens.
We have not yet fundamentally solved a number of issues that the masses feel strongly about, namely the lack of high-quality educational and medical resources and their uneven distribution, increasing upward pressure on prices and exorbitant housing price increases.
Real estate is indeed a tremendous problem for most Chinese. And on Saturday came the enormous pledge from the podium to eventually provide low-income housing for 20% of the country's urban households.
Every year, Premier Wen Jiabao takes the opportunity on the opening day of the National People's Congress to remind the people the government cares. But this year, more than the past, there are greater assurances from the government to improve things such as healthcare and education. It's a more worried government. Melissa Chan, AlJazeera, Beijing.
France will enforce a ban on full-face veils from next month, outlawing the garment virtually everywhere outside private homes. In recent months, leaders of Germany, France and Britain have all called on the Muslim community to become more integrated into mainstream society. Barnaby Phillips reports.
If you want to find out about multiculturalism in Britain, East London is a good place to start. 100 years ago, the immigrants here were Jewish, more recently Bengali, and now Somali. We visited this women's group. They've all arrived in this country in the past 25 years. So, do they feel British?
Absolutely, but I also feel that I'm very Somali as well. I am both, and sometimes I find it quite odd that you get pressure to choose one or the other.
You have to blend and also at the same time keep your own. You don't forget where you come from.
This East London street market is typical. People of different races and all sorts of religions getting on just fine, trying to make a living. There is Islamic extremism in Britain, but it's not typical. However, the fear of it does provoke a strong reaction amongst some parts of the white community.
It's our country! We're taking it back!
They're called the English Defence League, and they say they're a growing movement. Their mission is to defend English values against what they see as the creeping threat of Islam.
Muslims, in the name of Islam, are causing a lot of friction and a lot of bother. They're not integrating.
We don't want 5 years from now everybody turn around and suddenly we're in a dilemma where there's a bomber in every town.
This man is an expert on violent and extremist groups in Britain.
When you see the English Defence League march, you'll often find a counter-demonstration group, like the Muslim Defence League is a new group that's formed. And the two groups do sort of need each other. They do need their enemies to define themselves against. So you have this sort of spiralling where both groups inform each other of where they're going to be. They both turn up to the same marches, they both fight, and they both get more publicity as a result.
The Prime Minister worries that some Muslims define themselves only in terms of their religion. But it's difficult to impose a British identity on anyone. This country is still working out how to build a more coherent society in which everyone feels they belong. Barnaby Phillips, Al Jazeera, East London.
Russia's Orthodox Church has stirred controversy by calling for a national dress code. Neve Barker reports from Moscow.
Socialite Lena Nelidova takes us on a tour of her wardrobe. It may be minus 20 outside, but like many Russian women, it hasn't dulled her love for skimpy clothes.
I don't like clothes that reveal everything, but I do like clothes that cover just a little bit.
But it's precisely shows of flesh like this, championed by Russian high society and the fashion industry, that the Russian Orthodox Church have real problems with. They want Russians to think long and hard about the social impact of their dress decisions. The Orthodox Church is steeped in tradition. It advocates long skirts and headscarves for women and conservative clothes for men. But many secular and religious Russians responded angrily when senior cleric Vsevolod Chaplin claimed wearing a miniskirt could incite rape.
If a woman provokes people to think that she's a prostitute or something like that, she does bear her part of responsibility. I'm not justifying rape or improper behavior of men, but it's a part of the tradition of every religion that a woman should be humble.
Fashion industry experts hold a very different view.
This is what we're supposed to look like in summer.
Where choosing what to wear is less of a test of modesty and more an exercise in good taste.
Obviously, if you look a little bit ridiculous and you have humongously fat legs and you wear a mini skirt, it does look ridiculous, but it's the right of every person to choose. I mean, we have men nowadays wearing high heels and leggings.
Not so long ago, the communists denounced denim as an emblem of Western decadence. Today, 80% of Russians say they're Orthodox, but few are likely to surrender relatively newfound freedoms or fashions. Neve Barker, Al Jazeera, Moscow.
The main stories here on Al Jazeera. Libyan government forces have launched a fresh attack on the western town of AlJazeera. At least 30 people, mostly civilians, are said to have been killed on Saturday.